as fire crews are descending on this area, it does not appear that there's any kind of an effort up there yet. Now remember, oh my God.
Oh my God.
That looks like a second plane.
Dear
As
Lord.
I
just
did not
hit.
see a plane go in.
On September 11th, 2001, a terrorist attack plotted by Osama bin Laden and the Al-Qaeda shook our nation. At 8:46 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, the first plane crashed into the North Tower of the World Trade Center. 17 minutes later, a second plane hit the South Tower, resulting in a disaster that killed thousands and affected many more. Another plane was crashed into the Pentagon, and yet another that was headed for the White House, but was downed in Pennsylvania. Airspace was closed for 2 days, and all planes were ordered to either go to Canada or Mexico, or to land in the nearest airport. In total, almost 3,000 people died in the attacks, and also was the deadliest incident for firefighters and for law enforcement officers in the history of the United States, with 343 and 72 killed, respectively. So, how did you first hear about 9/11?
My ex-husband called on the phone because I had the boys at the house, and we both are from the East Coast, and he called and he had just seen something on the television, so I turned on the television and saw what was happening, and I immediately panicked because my daughter was living in New York City at the time, and called her to make sure she was safe, and she was, and told her to get out of New York if she could, and yeah, it was about maybe 7:45 in the morning, our time, when I first heard.
Did you hear this after the first crash, or?
This was after the first crash, so I actually got to see the second crash into the building.
Okay. What were your thoughts after you saw the second crash?
I grew up 45 minutes outside of Manhattan, and I lived in Manhattan for 6 years before I moved to the West Coast, and so obviously my thoughts were, who was in that building, and who did I know personally that was in that building or in that area, and where else was this going to hit? Because it seemed like it was so well coordinated, and we had heard also that there were other planes that had been hijacked, that I just think it was just terrifying, because we didn't know when the next thing was going to hit or where.
Immediately following the attack, the Bush administration declared a war on terrorism and launched an attack against Iraq. There were several laws passed which limited American privacy in an effort of security. In addition to many political effects, the 9/11 attacks had many social and economical repercussions on the United States. After the 9/11 attacks, many people had a lot of resentment towards Muslims, some of which was ridiculously exaggerated. Following the attacks, there was a 1,600% increase in hate crimes against Muslim Americans, raising it from the second least reported hate crime to the second highest. Over the course of a year, more than 1,700 cases of discrimination against Arab Americans, Muslim Americans, and South Asian Americans were reported.
Time to repent. Mohammed was a pedophile. Mohammed, cursed be his name, married a 7-year-old girl. If Mohammed was alive today, that prophet Mohammed would be on the Jerry Springer show. Having sex with a 7-year-old girl, I'd say sick and disgusting before holy, living God of the Bible. This country was founded on Christianity, not this Muslim, pedophile, disgusting, nasty, God-hating, anti-Jesus garbage. God hates the Muslim religion. God hates the Muslim religion. And every Muslim who denies Jesus Christ will be judged as a Muslim and die.
One survey found that seeing a Muslim boarding a plane made people much more uncomfortable than in most other situations.
Did you see any change in attitudes or prejudice towards Muslims following the attack?
Unfortunately, yes, and it still continues. And that part of it makes me very upset because I put myself, if I looked differently than I do, and if I happen to be Muslim, I'm sure that I would feel scared. I would feel scared that people were making judgments on me based on other people in my community that may have done something bad.
In one survey, Muslims were among the top 4 groups in which people felt immigration should be halted from. Such anti-Islam prejudice is also present in the government. In several states such as Oklahoma, Tennessee, California, and Minnesota, local lawmakers attempted to stop a mosque from being built under false pretenses and by attempting to ban Islamic law. Prejudice and discrimination toward Muslims are not only present in the U.S., but all over. In the days following the 9/11 attacks, people had strong reactions. While many expressed this resentment towards Muslims, others looked inward, feeling more exposed and less safe. The events that occurred on 9/11 was an eye-opener for many, as it showed them how quickly and unexpectedly they can be attacked. Not only was there a shock from the destruction, but a shock of feeling exposed.
How did your travel habits change after 9/11?
My travel habits changed in 2 ways. I didn't fly for a while because it was a scary proposition. And obviously when I did start flying again, there were so many things that they were trying to do at the airports for security that it made traveling more difficult and obviously took much more time. So it changed the timing of travel, and I think people's just overall security sense obviously changed.
This question's a lot like the first one I just asked, but
Okay.
In the years following 9/11, how did your attitudes toward air travel change? Do you have anything else to add? Or?
You know what? I still look around me when I am waiting in line to get on the airplane to see if anybody looks suspicious. Just saying. And I notice where I am on the airplane and how, if I had to help take somebody down, how I could get out of my seat, how I could help with that, I guess I'm kind of always thinking about it. Yeah.
In the weeks after the attacks, a survey conducted by the Institute of Social Research found that almost 50% of people felt that their sense of security and safety had been shaken. In another survey, about 60% of people had taken steps to protect themselves, which included avoiding public events and precautions when opening mail. As you have seen, the people in America had a very strong social reaction to the 9/11 attacks. They lashed out at Muslims who they felt deserved the blame and had great fear for their personal safety, even in their own homes. In addition to these social reactions, there was also a large economical repercussion that took great effect upon our nation.
Karen Gibbs joins us now here in the studio with a look at how the terror attacks are affecting the international markets. It's been a long day and a long night for you. What can you tell us about that?
That it's still going on, and the markets are still weaker. In fact, we did see Tokyo close now. It's off 6.6%. This is the lowest close in Tokyo in 18 years. And of course, you can imagine not only the financial sector, and you're looking at a chart of the trading session today, it's off another 1.73%. And as I said, the trade is thin because they don't have the main driver of this world's economy, the U.S., to follow. And so we've got closing markets here, the Amex, the NASDAQ, the New York Stock Exchange.
And it is also affecting the airline industry.
Yes.
We're seeing right away commercial air travel could suffer, not surprisingly, as a result of this.
People would be terrified. These 266 passengers, some on pleasure, some on business, but all felt that it was safe to travel. You're going to see a sharp pullback, and the industry itself is saying maybe a 50% fall off in travel. That means that they may be strapped for cash.
There has been much more spending on national security, probably as the direct consequence of 9/11, and that has exacerbated the deficit. The most direct relationship is that probably for the rest of our history, we will have to spend more on national security. And that spending, it costs corporations as they spend more for the security of their own people, for instance. But it does cost the U.S. government a lot, the ramping up of spending to keep us secure from terrorists. And perhaps in ordinary times that wouldn't matter as much. But if we look at our current economic picture, when there is so much worry about the gargantuan federal government deficit and a worry about what can we do to reduce our spending, here's a source of spending that is much greater and will remain much greater as a direct consequence of 9/11.
The economy took a turn for the worst. Immediately after the attack, the stock market closed for 4 days. In the months following, over 100,000 jobs were lost in New York City alone, as it experienced the worst of the economic downturn. The post-9/11 market crash set a record for the largest decline in the first day of trading. After the stock market reopened on September 17th, it dropped 685 points. Among the stocks that dropped the greatest, the Dow Jones Industrial Average dropped 1,370 points. The Standard & Poor's 500 lost 11.6%, and an estimated $1.4 trillion was lost in the first 5 days of trading. As expected, the stocks of the two airlines used in the attack, United Airlines and American Airlines, dropped 42% from $30.82 per share to $17.50, and also fell 39% from $29.70 per share to $18 per share, respectively. Although the people of America were devastated by the attacks, there was a huge sense of patriotism that developed. President Bush and his administration helped to ease the troubled minds of the American people.
It is evident in services of prayer and candlelight vigils and American flags, which are displayed in pride and wave in defiance. Our unity is a kinship of grief and a steadfast resolve to prevail against our enemies. And this unity against terror is now extending across the world. America is a nation full of good fortune, with so much to be grateful for. But we are not spared from suffering. In every generation, the world has produced enemies of human freedom. They have attacked America because we are freedom's home and defender. And the commitment of our fathers is now the calling of our time.
Immediately after 9/11, did you see any examples of visuals or actions like protests or riots in the news, or you witnessed? Or?
Well, I was keeping in close contact with my friends and family who were back there, and there was an overwhelming sense of patriotism more than anything. I do know that, like, my hometown, East Brunswick, which is 40 miles outside of Manhattan, there were flags flying everywhere, out of every house. People put them on the cars, and it just seemed like there was this overwhelming sense of community because of the tragedy. And I'd say that was more than protesting. There was more of a sense of coming together rather than pulling apart, which was, if you could say anything good happened, I guess it was the sense of community, specifically for people that lived in New York and the surrounding areas that I knew of.
People came together to comfort each other in a time of need and to stand up to the trials before them. America will never forget the tribulations it suffered from 9/11.